Thank you everybody who's joining us today from around the world. We are thrilled to have Miss Maria McConville and Miss Alexandra Grinston joining us today. I always like to say this morning, but then I'm always like, no, we have everybody from around the world. So it could be afternoon, it could be evening. So thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to spend some time with us. And Maria, Alexandra, how you guys doing today?
Good.
Good. Well, Maria, let's start off because I see where you're sitting right now on a comfy couch, but it looks like there is someone behind you that might be related to the USO in some form or fashion. So where are you at today?
Very observant, Nicole. So thanks for having me on today, for inviting me to be part of this. And yeah, you're right. So Jimmy and I have the honor of living in Quarters 1, which is here at Fort Myer in Arlington, Virginia. And Quarters 1 is the home of the Chief of Staff of the Army, has been since 1908. So there have been many, many famous chiefs of staff, including MacArthur and Omar Bradley and Marshall, just so many incredible generals that have lived here before us. And it's quite a historic home. But what's really cool about this room that I'm in, this is the Bob Hope room. And so that caricature, that portrait behind me is actually Bob Hope, as you can probably see, entertaining the troops. And then on either side, you've got Bob Hope and entertaining the troops. And then on this side, it looks like there's a little glare there, but Bob Hope is actually visiting some patients, some soldiers in the hospital way back, probably during the Vietnam War. So the reason that this room is dedicated to Bob Hope is because apparently he stayed here in Quarters 1 several times back, maybe in the 70s and 80s, when he was on his USO tours. And at the time they had this bedroom. And so apparently he used to stay in this bedroom. So over the years, this has become the Bob Hope room because it overlooks, it's on the 3rd floor of the house, and it overlooks Washington, D.C. And it's just an amazing view. I can see as I look out the window there, the Lincoln Memorial, the Washington Monument, the Capitol. And so they definitely put Bob Hope in a place of prominence in Quarters 1. And we're just so thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I mean, we at the USO were almost 80 years young, and Bob Hope was definitely a big part of that. So thank you for sharing that with us. And to get things started, for those who are joining us, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and a little bit about your journey to where you are right now?
Sure. So, well, first of all, I'm an Army veteran, and I was in the Army a million years ago. And that's how I met my husband. So Jimmy and I met at Fort Ord in Monterey, California. He's a helicopter pilot. He was a captain. I was a lieutenant on active duty. And we've been married 32 years. We have 3 adult children. And all 3 of our children and our son-in-law are on active duty in the Army. So all 3 of them serve, and 2 pilots, 1 behavioral health. Our daughter, who's the licensed behavioral health therapist, actually deployed this morning to Afghanistan for 9 months. So that's kind of, I'm going through the yin and the yang right now, right, of emotions. But so we've got the 3 kids in the Army, and we've moved 21 times. So they've moved almost as many times with us. And, you know, that's been, just like everybody else, been really exciting, and also, you know, can be a drudgery at times, but
well, in 21 years, that's a lot. That's a lot of moves. So, and we'll have to go into that. I have some more questions about moving and traveling and everything like that as we have our conversation. So I look forward to that. And then I want to jump to Alexandra Grinston. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. Good. How are you? Thank you
Good.
for having me.
Yeah, no, we're thrilled to have you this morning. And could you tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey as well?
Sure. I'm actually sitting in my study at Quarters 17. The Quarters 17 was built in 1935 and has been the home of the Sergeant Major of the Army since 1992. Wow. Just to give you a little bit of the history. I actually grew up in Germany and met my husband when he was stationed in Schweinfurt, Germany, and I was a student at the University of Würzburg. My husband and I have been married for 24 years. We have lived at 11 duty stations in the United States, but also in Germany and in Italy. And sometimes I joke and say that my husband's way of showing me different, unique locations in the United States was by PCSing. That was his way of showing me the States and Europe overseas. So we lived at some very unique and special places throughout the States. For example, we lived in upstate New York at Fort Drum, where I learned that there's something called lake effect snow. Didn't know it was that much. Fort Sill, Oklahoma, I learned that you better shake out your shoes, your sneakers, before you put them on, because there could be scorpions inside your shoe. We also spent some time at Fort Riley, Kansas, where when you go outside in the winter, you better check the chill factor, because that will really determine what you should wear when you go outside. And then we also experienced the beauty and the rain of the Pacific Northwest when we were at Joint Base Lewis McChord. And we were at other places too. But now we're at Fort Myer, Virginia, since last year, August of last year. And then it's really beautiful here, and we're really glad to be here. We have two daughters, a senior who will actually turn 18 this month.
Wow.
And then a sophomore, and they're both incredible kids and impress me every day with their resiliency.
Yes.
Before our daughters were born, I worked in education, but then also in marketing and in administration. And then when they were little, we moved so much, and my husband deployed all the time, that I decided to stay at home and take care of the kids and volunteer in my free time.
Excellent.
Now, and I mentioned that I was born and raised in Germany and lived all over the States. So I would be curious to hear where our listeners are stationed right now, and if there are maybe some spouses in Germany right now, or if anybody has lived in Germany before.
Yeah, we're gonna have to take a look at the chat box and see if everybody, like she said, if like Alexandra said, oh, it looks like we've got a couple spouses all over. I see Baumholder.
Oh yeah, we were there.
Yay. And a couple other locations. Definitely a lot around the States. And I'll check in with Liz here in a little bit to see where else people are. Oh, Bonn. Oh, Laura Zabriskie said, let's see here. She was in Bonn, Germany.
Oh wow, that's a unique.
Oh, this is fun. Hey Liz, I'm gonna call out to you to see what else other people are saying out there.
You got it. We've got born in Russia, grew up in the UK, now in Florida. We've got down the road in Fort Belvoir, but did a JAG internship in Kaiserslautern. Nice. And someone else who was stationed in Würzburg, I never say that correctly, with the third ID. Someone else born in Heilbronn while dad was stationed in Germany. So lots and lots of overseas. Yay. Oh, another one spent years in Vilseck. Awesome.
I love it. And then, well, Liz, who is producing the show right now, was stationed in Germany at once upon a time, and I was as well from Kaiserslautern, Germany. So a lot of Germany connections here. So this is fantastic. And speaking of connections, have the two of you been stationed together at any point?
Yeah, so we were together back at Fort Campbell. I don't even know when it was, Alexandra. Maybe we were there 3 times. So I think it was maybe we were there 2011 to 2014. So I think
that's when it was. Mm-hmm.
It was during that. We were never stationed in Germany. So Jimmy's been in the Army 39 years. And we've been stationed in Hawaii, but that's the only, overseas tour that we ever had. So with those 21 moves, most of those were stateside. It was interesting, that was, other than Fort Campbell, a lot of the places that Alexandra mentioned, weren't places where we were stationed. So it's kind of neat to hear the different, but although we did get to go, when Jimmy was deployed the first time to Iraq, and he did his R&R we got to meet him in Garmisch, Germany. And so the kids and I spent a week in Garmisch with Jimmy, and that was just beautiful.
Yes.
And then just this past, I think it was October, I got to accompany Jimmy to Germany. We were in, I think we were in Wiesbaden. And that was really beautiful and so nice. And that's one of the things that I get to do as the spouse of the Chief of Staff of the Army. Is I'm really honored to be able to represent Army spouses and Army families. We travel, not during COVID, get to travel with him overseas and stateside and get to have sessions with family members and spouses and hear about all the great things that go on at the installations, as well as the challenges. But with that, I've been able to travel with him. And so Germany was one of the great places that we got to go last year.
That's fantastic. And I know, speaking for many spouses around the world, it means so much when you guys take the time to talk to them and get to know them at each location. So thank you so much for doing that. Really appreciate it. And if you want to, Maria, if we could go into what was life like before you were a military spouse?
Wow, so long ago. See if I can remember. So I grew up in Rocky River, Ohio, which is on the west side of Cleveland. I'm the second oldest of 6 kids, and we traveled a lot. My parents were really into camping, and so we traveled all over. They loved the parks, so we went to a lot of the national parks all over the United States. The funny thing is, the one place we never went was to New England. So what did I do? I married a New Englander. But we traveled and we camped and had a lot of fun. We played softball. So there's 5 girls and 1 boy in my family. So we had a built-in girls softball team. So we played a lot of ball. I also in college was a synchronized swimmer.
Wow.
And so I did that for 4 years. And then I went to college in Ohio, Miami of Ohio. I was very involved in sororities, and I was the president of Panhellenic my senior year. And sometimes I feel like the Army feels like a big sorority, you know,
Right.
just of a different kind. But then right out of college, I actually got a commission into the Army. I'm a dietitian, and I needed to do a dietetic internship, and I didn't want to have to pay for it. So when I started looking at the list of where all the dietetic internships were, I found one that actually paid, and it was with the Army. And I didn't know nothing about the Army. I did not grow up in a household where people had been in the military. And so I thought, well, I like to travel. Isn't that what the Army's about? I think I'll do that. And so I applied and luckily got accepted and did my internship through the Army at Brooke Army Medical Center, which is a great training, and then got stationed out at Fort Ord in Monterey, California, like I said, which is where I met Jimmy. And when we got married, the week we got married, we moved from Monterey, California. I jokingly say we moved from Monterey to LA, and people think, oh, you just moved down the coast. No, we moved to Lower Alabama. So I went from being a officer in the Army, single, to being an unemployed dependent wife in Alabama, all in the space of 1 week. And I jokingly say that was my first identity crisis.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Wow. And then from there, did it take a while to kind of start to figure out that you were a service member, and then did you get out of the military and then become the spouse, like you said, or my commitment
was up at that point, and but I stayed in the reserves for 8 years. But
okay.
As we started having kids, and ironically enough, during Desert Shield, my husband didn't deploy at that point, but they had sent me a letter saying they wanted medical people back on active duty, and I was pregnant with our second child at the time. So I said, you know what, I think I just better resign my commission, which is what I did. And
right. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that. And then Alexandra, before you were a military spouse, you were living in Germany.
So I was a typical German kid, teenager and young adult. I grew up in a small town in Bavaria. During high school, I was on the cross-country team and then the track and field team. And because I lived in Germany, I think I was fortunate to have some unique experiences. My school, for example, went on school trips to Austria to go skiing. My senior class spent a week in Paris, and every summer my family went on vacation in Italy. And I have some really good memories from those trips. And after high school, I went to the University of Würzburg. I studied German and English as a second language to become a teacher at a gymnasium. Now, a gymnasium is the German version of high school, but it's highly specialized and prepares students for college.
Okay.
While I was at college, I shared an apartment with 4 other students, and during the week I studied and went to classes. And then on the weekends, I would go home to see my family because they only lived 45 miles away from where my college was. And I also had a job at home. So on Fridays and Saturdays, I worked at home and spent time with my family. I didn't know anything about the Army, and I never thought I would marry a soldier. And I didn't know at all what it would mean to be a military spouse. But it's been quite interesting and quite exciting.
Yeah, for sure. And so living in Germany, and it sounds like a lot of our guests that are attending today, a lot of the spouses have some sort of affiliation with Germany in some way. But for those who haven't been to Germany or maybe haven't explored the German cuisine, what is a favorite dish that you like to make with your family that you recommend we try?
Well, I have to admit that I love to go back to Germany and eat the food there because I think it's just so, they're just great cooks. So, of course, I like Wiener Schnitzel. Mm-hmm. And I think a lot of people know that, the breaded veal or pork. And it's actually funny that my husband makes really good Wiener Schnitzel. So when we want to eat that, then he prepares it, and it's always very good. My children like my version of pancakes. It's a German version of pancakes. And there's not really a recipe. I just mix eggs, flour, milk, and vanilla sugar until it has the right consistency. And then the pancakes are really thin and not fluffy at all, not fluffy like the American pancakes, and we eat them with jelly or applesauce. Oh, that's kind of what my kids like. And then we bake a lot because that's a family memory for me. Every weekend, my family would make a cake because we had cake and tea every Saturday and Sunday afternoon. So one of my favorite cakes is Gewürzkuchen, which is a spice cake with cinnamon and nutmeg and chocolate chips. It's very delicious. And then there's another cake called Rotweinkuchen, which is actually like a pound cake with a cup of wine. You add a cup of red wine to it, and it's really delicious. But when you are in Germany, anything you eat there is good. My favorite dish, I think, is Spätzle, which is a very unique kind of pasta. And then my aunt makes Spätzle with green beans, and I just think it's delicious. But there's anything you eat, I think, in Germany is going to be good.
When we lived in Germany, I thought that Spätzle, if I'm saying that correctly,
it
was maybe something difficult to make, but it's really not that challenging.
It's not that difficult, but it can be a little time consuming. Yeah.
Yes, that is true. And then I don't know, in Bavaria, did you eat a lot of Flammkuchen, or is that just kind of a regional thing? Because we had a lot.
No, you can eat that too. That's good too. Or especially in the fall, they have what I like is I guess you can tell I like sweet food. Pflaumenkuchen. So it's the cake with plums.
Oh yes, yes.
And what I like about Germany is it's very seasonal. So during the spring, everybody will go out and buy asparagus, the white asparagus and the strawberries, and you'll see vendors on the side of the road that sell the fruit and vegetables. And then, during the fall, you'll get a lot of apples and then, wines and so on. So I like that it's seasonal, and you can really see it when you go out to shop, produce is, is in season right now. And
Yeah,
it's almost like a little celebration, because then all the restaurants will feature dishes made out of, asparagus or other ingredients during that time.
yeah, that, and the white asparagus was something that was definitely an eye opener, because you're like, is it going to taste good? But it really is. So Maria,
like steak, so you can, since you live a couple houses from me, Alexandra, feel free to one of those cinnamon spice cakes with the chocolate chips and just drop it on my front porch. That would be really great.
I'll make one this weekend.
I feel like we could do a baking lesson on German Kuchen, German cakes. That sounds delicious. Well, Maria, I'm going to come back to you and ask you about, I know you're passionate about traveling, and right now I know that military spouses are probably wishing that they could be traveling right now too, because so many military spouses love to travel. That's one of the things they come back to us on feedback survey. They want to talk more about traveling, and that's one of the things that many of them are passionate about as well. So I wanted to ask you, what are a couple of your favorite places to travel to, and where do you recommend we check out once we're able to kind of get out of this COVID-19 situation?
Gosh, good question. So as I said earlier, with my family, we traveled a lot, and like I said, big family, 8 of us. So we camped everywhere we went. And by camping, you really get to explore a lot of things. And my parents were really into the national parks. I mean, we went all over, from Yellowstone to the Grand Canyon to the Petrified Forest to, everywhere. And that really instilled a sense of adventure and learning in us. Obviously with our military way of life, it almost seems like every time you PCS, it's a new adventure, it's a new place, and it feels like you're traveling and you get to take advantage. When we lived in Hawaii, we were fortunate, even though our kids were really little, we got to go to 3 or 4 of the different islands. So that was really fun. Like I said, we went to Garmisch, Germany, and then when our oldest graduated from high school, we took our family on a trip, the 5 of us, to Italy and Ireland, each one of those for a week. My husband's family's from Northern Ireland, so we spent quite a bit of time in Northern Ireland, but went around some of the Republic of Ireland. That was a great trip. And then 2 years ago, 2 of our kids overlapped. They both had rotations to Korea, and they overlapped by 3 months. And so because it was a rotation and not a deployment, we were allowed to go visit. But my husband's been to Korea, and he doesn't, get to just go on vacation like that. So I called up a girlfriend that I knew liked to travel, and I said, do you want to go to Asia with me? I'd never been to Asia before. And I said, well, I want to go to South Korea to spend a couple days with our kids. But since we're going to go there, let's go to a couple different places. So she and I actually went to China first, and we climbed the Great Wall of China. And we went up to Xi'an and saw the Terracotta Warriors. And then we went to Vietnam, to Hanoi and a couple places in Vietnam, and took a cruise along the Halong Bay. And then on to South Korea, where we spent about 4 days. So that was really an adventuresome trip, and really eye-opening, and a special thing that we were able to do. And then last year at this time, our oldest son was PCSing from Fort Drum to Fort Eustis, where he currently is. And he said, well, I've got like 30 days, so I'm going to travel. And I said, I want to travel with you. So he called me up one day and he goes, okay, Mom, you can travel with me for the first half of my trip. And he said, and we're going to Africa. So,
Wow.
So we did. We actually went to Botswana, Zambia, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. During that time, we hiked. We did 2 really amazing safaris. Botswana, I've never seen so many elephants in my life. And then we saw all kinds of other animals on our safari that we did in South Africa. And so that was really amazing. One, that my son would want his mother to travel with him.
Right.
And number 2, that we got to go to some amazing places. So what I find about travel is I think it just makes you a more interesting person. And I think that you have new things to talk about and new adventures. When Jimmy and I hosted our holiday reception here at Christmas time, 2 weeks after we moved in, you know how that goes.
Yeah.
500 people at our house 2 weeks
Let's
after.
have a party, right?
But one of the attachés that came through the receiving line was from Zambia. And he said, I suppose you've never been to Zambia. And I said, well, as a matter of fact, I was in Zambia last year. And he became my new best friend. So he said, well, you have to come back. So you never know when you're going to strike up a conversation or meet someone that you actually have something in common with.
When I really think that that's what brings a lot of military spouses together too. It's trying to find that commonality, and then you kind of start to talk about what bases you've been to or what countries, and then you instantly have that connection, you know, to talk about, oh, I was in Germany, or we were, you know, I was at Fort Eustis or something like that. And then you can really connect with that person and get to know them in another way. So I love that too, that you're able to make that connection with him.
And now, since we can't travel during COVID, so 3 of my friends that I got to know very well, that we hung out a lot in Hawaii when we lived there, we've remained friends for 25 years. And so what we're doing every Tuesday is we call it our Hawaii Friends Vacation Club. So every Tuesday we Zoom, and each one of us kind of does a little informal presentation of a place they want to go on vacation. So we've done a bunch of them so far. We've been to Machu Picchu, we've been to Bermuda, we've been to Glacier National Park, we've been to Kruger Park in South Africa. So each week we are going on vacation virtually to a different place, and it's been really fun. It's nice not to just always talk about COVID.
Right, exactly. Let's talk about other places besides our living room. I love it. Well, and Alexandra, I'm going to shift over to you, and we've been talking about traveling and cooking. What else are, besides, I know you're passionate about those as well. What else are you passionate about? What outside the military life?
I love running.
Ah, yes.
It's a great exercise, and when I run, I get to enjoy my surroundings, and it clears my mind. For me, it's a really good stress relief. And I remember one year when we were stationed in Baumholder, Germany, my friend and neighbor convinced me to train for the Rome Marathon. Now, our husbands were deployed at that time, and it was actually really good to have something else to focus on. So we trained every day, or almost every day, and got really fit. And then when the guys came back, we left them with the kids, and we traveled to Rome and ran the Rome Marathon together. And that was just amazing. It kind of spoils running for you a little bit, because the scenery is so beautiful. You don't really want to run another marathon, but it was just a wonderful experience. To have something during the deployment that distracted you, and then to have this big event at the end of the deployment that you completed together. It was just a great experience.
I love that. And I love that you just shared that, because I've shared on previous Coffee Connection Lives that I'm a runner. And the only reason I became a runner really is because my husband said he was deploying, and I thought, well, I better get a hobby.
Yeah.
And we were in Germany at that time. So I told him, I'm going to run the Berlin Marathon.
Oh, wonderful.
And he's like, you don't run. And I'm like, now that you just said that, I'm going to do this. Like, this is happening. So I ran the Berlin Marathon, and then I ran the Rome Marathon, and then I ran the Paris Marathon. So I love that you said the Rome, because it's, again, that commonality that we're able to say, oh, that's so cool. Tell me more about that. So that's fantastic. Are you still running those distances, or?
No, I slowed down a little bit. I took a break. I did more yoga than running for a while, but now I'm running more because I realized the Army 10 miler is coming up again this year. I ran it last year for the first time together with my husband. He actually slowed down for me and ran it with me, and it was a lot of fun. It was just really neat. So I'm training for that, and hopefully it will happen this year. You never know.
Right. Well, yeah, I mean, there's different ways to get out and exercise right now, and running is one of the best things I'm finding, to do right now. So at least we have running. And Maria, for you, what are you passionate about? Are you a runner? Have you run the Rome Marathon?
I'm passionate about running my mouth. Cheer for you guys. I cheer for everybody at the marathons and the 10 miler. I was a runner back when I was in the Army, and maybe for some years after that. But I don't enjoy running anymore. It's not real friendly to my back and my knees. So like Alexandra, I've gotten more into yoga. I love walking. Yeah. I've been a weightlifter. I've been lifting weights probably for about 25 years. And so I do that a couple times a week, yoga a couple times a week. So health and wellness, of course, is my passion. It's kind of my livelihood. But I'm also passionate about learning. I just feel like I have this love of learning. My grandmother was the same way. She lived to be 97, and she was always learning something. She was a teacher by trade, and I think she kind of instilled that love of learning into us. And so I love to read a lot of different things. I'm kind of like a self-improvement junkie. I like to read a lot of self-improvement books, but I'm also really passionate about trying to mentor other spouses. And actually in my career, I've mentored other dietitians because I really have gone through this journey as an Army spouse for 32 years, realizing that there isn't one way to be an Army spouse. And I think that what sometimes we miss is that we have to learn to live our lives authentically. And so when I talk with people or mentor people, I'm passionate about helping them figure out what is their best self, what does their best life look like, how can they live their lives authentic to them and still be with the military. We know that the Army is a very traditional, has a lot of just so much pomp and circumstance and ceremony and a lot of great things behind it. But sometimes I found as a spouse that it maybe felt like we had to operate within a certain SOP. And so what I've really come to find is that we really need to be individuals. We really need to be living our best lives. We really have to live our lives authentic. We can't try to be a certain way, because I went through the struggle with that. And I find that when I decided to, for example, go back to school and get my master's degree when my husband was a one-star general, and people were like, oh my gosh, you're going to do that? What about, FRGs, and what about yada, yada, yada? And I was like, if I'm doing what I'm passionate about, I'm actually a better helpmate to him, a better helpmate to my kids, and a better helpmate to the Army. So I think that I'm really passionate about it, helping people to realize you've got to live your most authentic life.
I love that. I absolutely love that. I mean, it gives me goosebumps just hearing that story. Just, I think so many spouses need to hear that and really, just follow through with that too. So thank you for that. And Liz, I wanted to check in with you to see what the spouses are saying in the chat box, or if we have any questions out there.
Well, we have a wonderfully active chat box, lots of people commenting on the running. Someone noted that instead of running through Germany, though, she's decided to eat her way through Germany, which I think sounds fantastic. And I'm sure there's a happy medium in there somewhere. We've also had lots of really great questions come in. The first one that came in is actually from Adriana. And Maria, you did touch on this a little bit, but I think maybe we could expand on it. Her question is, I identified so much when you mentioned your identity crisis going from working to staying home. Was there anything in particular that made that transition easier for you?
Not the first identity crisis. So I think that having kids kind of brought me out of that. Jimmy and I were married about 2.5 years before we had our first child, and then we kind of had our 3 kids pretty close together. I say that my second identity crisis happened right about the time, and I just mentioned going back to school and getting my master's degree. So when Jimmy became a one-star general, our oldest was going off to college, and then 2 were in high school. And I started thinking one day, like, who am I going to be when my kids are all out of the house? And, you know, so much of your identity when you're a parent and you're a mom is wrapped up in your kids. And so I started thinking, like, who am I going to be and what am I going to be? And I really at that point had put my love of working in the nutrition field kind of on the back burner. And I really felt like I was out of balance. I was struggling and didn't really know why I was struggling, but I was struggling. And I realized, it hit me one day, believe it or not, I was reading a book. It was called 48 Days to the Work You Love. And knowing that I wanted to get back into my field, and the question that the author posed was, are you living the life you were meant to live, or are you living someone else's life? And I realized at that point, I was like, you know, I'm living General McConville's life and I'm living my kids' life, but I'm not so sure I'm living my life. And so that's when I said, I've got to change. Something's got to change. So I had been toying with the idea of going back to school and getting my master's degree. And it was like, yep, that's what I need to do. So Jimmy deployed for 15 months right at that time. That was kind of fortuitous timing. And so while he was deployed, I went back to school in the evenings and really applied myself and studied a lot. And proud to say that 2 weeks before he came home from that 15-month deployment, I walked across that stage with my diploma and for my master's degree. And I have to say that even though, like, I don't know if getting a master's degree is, you know, that monumental of a thing, but it was for me. I felt like it was really a first big step in my new identity, or maybe rediscovering my identity. And then I went on from there to eventually starting my own consulting business, which is what I have now. And I think that getting that master's degree and really saying to myself, you know, I have to do what makes me whole, I gave myself permission, and then it gave me the confidence. And so after getting my master's degree, I started my own business. And that really was more out of frustration because we were moving yet again. I had gotten a really great job after getting my master's degree, but then we moved again. I did get to take that job with me. I worked remotely for 2 years, but then that company merged with another company and they kind of just phased our section out. So it was at that point I said to Jimmy, I'm tired of being the stupid new person. I don't want to have to start interviewing for jobs again and learning a whole new company and all that. So I started my own consulting business. It was something that I had dabbled in for a few years prior, but I solidified it by, you know, registering my business in Florida, which is where we've built our retirement home. I hired an accountant. I have a federal tax number. I know how to do marketing and my accounting for my business and everything. So for me personally, and I've had this business now for 7 years, it has been the best thing ever. I work from home. I can work from our house in Florida, here at Fort Myer. My mom's in Ohio, wherever I am, my kids, wherever they are. I choose the work that I want to take on. I'm more discerning about what I will do for work. And I also have a price that I will charge, and I'm not willing to sacrifice my expertise for something that doesn't meet my needs.
Wow. I love all of that. I feel like we could take all of that and do another episode on how to start your business and how, you know, just the fact that you started from ground zero and then went all the way to where you're at now. And you, like you said, you're going to stick with what you know, and you're not going to charge less because of the situation, you know, where you are. It's, you know what you're worth, and this is what you will charge. So I love that. Thank you.
Empowering.
Yeah, it really is. And Liz, well, I know we have a lot of questions coming in, so I'm going to see what else we have.
We do. Everyone is just loving this. The next question is for Alexandra. Adriana wants to know if you could recommend one German location to someone visiting Germany for the first time, where would you recommend?
Oh, now that is hard. That's a hard question to ask because there are so many nice locations. I think it depends on what you're interested in. I love my college town, Würzburg. I think it's really unique. They have 2 castles there you can go to. They have a really nice downtown, so you get a little bit of a feeling for the German way of life, because you see the outdoor cafes and all the students walking around or sitting and enjoying some, coffee. Yeah, I think that would be a good place to visit. Hopefully the listener hasn't been there yet and can still go. But again, there's so many nice places in Germany. It's really hard to just mention one.
Yep. Liz, I'm going to go back to you.
Sure. Sort of tagging on to that, Jackie wants to know, for both of you, with all of your travels, is there anything you ladies have collected over the years to remember each place you've gone?
I can say I'm not a real big, I'm not a trinket person, so I don't like to buy a lot of trinkety things, but I do like to buy one special thing from each place. So when my son and I went to Africa, I bought some beautiful things that have elephants on them, because we just fell in love with the elephants in Botswana mostly. And so I will buy one thing, I have an elephant table runner that I have on my dining room table. So every time I walk in there, I can look at that table runner and be like, wow, we went to Africa and we saw those elephants. For me though, the pictures. So every time I've been on one of the trips, I do one of those Shutterfly picture books, and like to keep those on the coffee table. So then every once in a while I can just look back at the pictures and have memories of those.
Yeah, and it's the same for me. I love the photos. I've been taking a lot of photos. I have, quite a few photo albums, and those are nice memories of trips, but also nice memories of, due to locations, that, photos of people I spend time with, family readiness group events or other social events. And it's just neat to, look at those photo albums every once in a while and remember the great times you had. And then we also my husband and I like to buy art. So if we are in very unique places that we feel are unique to us, we like to look for a picture. So in Italy, for example, before we PCS'd, my husband had to buy a painting in Venice. And we just had our first daughter, and she was only a few days old. And he was determined before we PCS'd, he had to buy a painting in Venice from one of these street artists. So we took our little daughter to Venice. It was a really hot day, and it's actually a joke because he forgot that there's so many bridges in Venice, and we took the stroller, so he had to carry the stroller over I don't know how many bridges to finally get to the street artist where we found this beautiful painting of Venice. And it's just really neat to look at that and remember the fun time we had in hot Venice with our little baby, who was really miserable, but it was worth it. We didn't stay too long. And then, let's see, other places too. We would always see if we find a nice piece of art that we can put on our wall. And then, when people come to visit, it's also a nice conversation starter, because they may ask, well, where did you get that picture from? And then we can talk about it, which is always interesting. So one year, I actually worked in the Sinai for a couple of months for college, and my husband decided to come and visit, and we bought a piece of art in Egypt. So that was pretty special to us, just the way, we happened to get to Egypt and spend some time there, and then to find a nice piece that we liked. And that's in our dining room right now, and whenever people come over, we like to talk about our trip to Egypt and the experience we had there.
It is really fun to go to a military couple's home, and you walk in and you just know there's so many stories in the house, from the artwork, from the table runner, Christmas time on the tree, the ornaments of where people have been to. So thank you for sharing that. Very, I know everybody can definitely relate for sure. And Liz, I'm going to keep checking in with you because I see a lot of questions are still coming in.
Yes, people have some really great questions, and I'm honored to be able to ask these. Lisa wants to know, pertaining to military tradition, do you see attitudes toward the role of military spouses changing? And if so, how, and what still needs to change?
Well, that's a really good question. I mean, the fact that I've been a military spouse for 32 years, of course, things have changed. I think that the role of supporting our soldier has never changed. I mean, when you look at what Army spouses have done for years and years and years, supporting our soldier. I mean, we support our soldiers, we support each other, the military community, and we support the nation. I think that that hasn't changed, thankfully, and hopefully never will. I do think somewhat the role has changed as far as things have opened up to us as spouses. For example, probably when I married into the military in the 80s, there weren't a whole lot of spouses that worked. We didn't have necessarily the options that we have now. The fact that I can work from home and telecommute and have my own business, I don't know that those were options so much when I was a brand new spouse. I think that it can be a really great marriage between the two of keeping some of the, the traditions that are inherent with the military. I just think that we as spouses have done a tremendous job thinking outside the box. And that's where, as Nicole was saying in the beginning, like, we're resilient. We have learned to weather the storm. This is another storm with COVID that we're going through. But I think that spouses are super resilient. I'm amazed at every time we travel how creative they are, and looking at the ways that they've overcome some of the obstacles of being a military spouse, to be able to work if they want to work, or to have their hobbies and have their passions, and sometimes create work from their hobbies and passions. And I think that we're such a great example to civilians, because we don't sit around waiting for the opportune time. We take the opportunity and just go for it. So I think that some of the traditions and the protocol with the Army can't change, because it's an institution that is founded on traditions and protocols. But I think that as spouses, yes, our supporting role has not changed, but the options that are available to us through the internet and through teleworking and through school online and all the things that we can do has certainly changed, and definitely for the better. And I just see how empowered spouses are now, and I'm just so proud of them.
Well, and you're talking about how resilient spouses are, and it's Military Spouse Appreciation Week. This Friday, we're going to celebrate Military Spouse Appreciation Day. So I wanted to see, I know that you have something called, something called Spotlight Army Spouses. So what is that, and what does that mean to you, Maria?
Well, so when Jimmy took over as the Chief of Staff last summer, we talked about what my role would be, and I told him that I came up with a name for what I would call my platform, and it's called SAS, because, in the Army, you have to have an acronym for everything.
Absolutely.
So SAS is Spotlighting Army Spouses. I wanted to take every opportunity to show the world how amazing our spouses are. And so I've been fortunate enough to do that. At Christmas time, we had spouses, and then also vets and family members sent ornaments that we proudly displayed on one whole Christmas tree here at Quarters 1. So I was able to do that. Also, when we travel, and sometimes we get to travel internationally, every single gift that I take to give to an international spouse is something that a military spouse has created. And so every time that I have the opportunity to talk, Alexandra and I go to lots of meetings on behalf of the Army and Army spouses and Army families. So every time that I and she also get to talk about Army spouses, we're always trying to spotlight all the great things that our Army spouses are doing, because everywhere I go, I always come out of there and my husband will say, well, how did it go? You know, meeting with the spouses. I'm like, they just blow my mind how amazing they are and the things that they're doing and the resourcefulness and the creativity. So I want the world to know about that. And I feel like that it's my privilege to represent Army spouses, but I'm going to do my best to spotlight all the great things that they are and that they do.
Fantastic. And then Alexandra, you've lived in 12 different locations as a military spouse, correct? Is that okay? So what are some wonderful ways you've seen military spouses come together to support each other in their communities and with their families during this time?
Well, I think there are so many unique ways military spouses support each other, their communities, and their families. But what I think is really special about military spouses is that they reach out to each other and they help each other to get connected. Very often, you know, they reach out via phone call, text, email, or when they know of a new spouse, they go to the home of the new spouse and welcome him or her personally. And if they know somebody at the installation, for example, you know, they hear somebody's PCSing and they'll immediately say, oh, I know so-and-so at your future duty location, I can get you connected. And then that way you already know somebody when you get there. Because sometimes I think when we PCS to a location that we're not very excited about, that personal connection can make a big difference and can help embrace that new location. And then nowadays, spouses use technology in so many ways to stay connected and share information. I know there's so many Facebook groups out there, you know, Facebook groups for each location that support spouses. Spouses can get information, share information, and stay connected. But then there's also Facebook groups that reach across the United States and overseas, and that's a way how spouses support each other. By, you know, providing information, resources, and helping each other. And I think especially during the last few months, the spouses have supported each other and members of their community more than before in a variety of ways. And I'm always impressed how kind spouses are and caring and compassionate and impressed by the different ways they find to support each other. It's just amazing. And like Maria said, military spouses have so many talents and they love to share their talents with other people. And it's just, it's great.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And the creativity that I have seen from so many spouses around the world with, you know, what they're doing with themselves, with their kids, with their families during this time, it just, I'm like, this is amazing. This is wow. So yes, thank you for that. And then we're almost at time. So I wanted to check with Liz and see if we had one more question for the ladies. And then we can wrap it up here in a couple minutes.
There are so many great questions in the chat box. I think we'll wrap it up with this one. Okay. Megan wants to know, what is the best advice you were given from another military spouse?
So we'll start with Maria. I'm putting you on the spot, so I apologize.
The best advice that I was given from a military spouse, you know, putting people first. I think that for a while with a lot of the deployments, people were so into their role, you know, as an FRG leader, and am I doing the right things, and am I being the right person in this role, and you know, so we get kind of caught up in that, the role sometimes that we are in. And I think that being yourself and being a person first, being a mom if you're a mom or a dad, being a parent, being a daughter. And I remember one time a senior spouse said to me, we all have lives outside of the Army, and we don't know what's going on in someone else's life at that moment. So accept people for who they are today, and not really judging people because maybe they're not doing something that we perceive that they should be doing, or the way that we perceive they should be doing it. But just remember that we all have a life outside of the Army, and that we're all so much more than just an Army spouse. Like I said, a daughter, a sister, a mother, whatever. And I think that was really great advice.
I love that. And then Alexandra, do you have anything?
Yeah, I think it's similar to what Maria is saying. Take care of yourself first. Make sure that you're healthy, you're happy, and then when you are happy with your life, you can share that happiness with others, and also admit to yourself that it's okay to say no every once in a while. So if you feel that you're burned out and you just can't volunteer the third time, or support something because you're just too tired, then it's okay to say no and say, well, I really need to take a break, and then once I get my energy back, then I'll support again. But definitely take care of yourself.
And I think the best advice that I could give people is not to choose to feel guilty if we decide to take care of ourselves, or say, no, I really don't want to volunteer for that, or I really don't want to go to that whatever event today. Is that it's okay to say no, but don't feel guilty about it, because then you just kind of beat yourself up over it. But we know what's best for ourselves. And so when we make a decision, I always say, just state your decision and feel good about it, and don't go back and start rehashing all that, because we're good at doing that.
So good at that. Yes. And then Alexandra, I wanted to see if you had anything else you'd like to say for the spouses joining in today and that will be watching this later. Anything you'd like to say for Military Spouse Appreciation Week?
Yeah, I just want to thank all military spouses for what they do on a regular basis to support their service member, their family, and their community. Thank you for your commitment, for never giving up, no matter how difficult military life may be, and for always trying to make the best out of a situation. Thank you for your flexibility, your ability to deal with an ever-changing schedule and all the changes that are thrown your way. And thank you for your independence. That especially shows when you manage life successfully while your spouse is gone to the field or to a deployment. And then thank you for your compassion for everybody and around you, not just your immediate family members, but other military spouses and members of the community. And just thank you for being unique and sharing your talents that you have with everybody.
I love that. And then Maria, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Well, I don't want to minimize sometimes the hardship and the challenges that we go through, especially right now with so much uncertainty with our current crisis. But like I said earlier, I'm just so proud of all of our family members and our spouses, because we are resilient. We rise to the challenge every single time. And I think that it's okay to feel down at times. I think it's okay to say this is hard. It's okay to ask for help. And that's what makes us more connected to other people, because we can allow people to help us and we can connect other people. I think that it was in the 80s that President Reagan proclaimed this week to be Spouse Appreciation Week. So I think that was the greatest thing that they could do, because I think it's important that we recognize families. We, as the family members, are the backbone of the military. And so I agree with Alexandra. I just want to thank all of you for all that you do every day and for making us so proud. And as I always say, keep letting your light shine.
I love that. And I know for all of the spouses that are joining and listening in, we want to say thank you to the both of you for everything that you both do for us. So conversation today and the guidance and the feedback and all the thoughts that you shared with us, we really appreciate it. And I thank you so much on behalf of the USO for joining us today and being with us and spending some time with us, and hope that the both of you have a wonderful rest of the week, and happy Mother's Day to the both of you, because that's coming up. And thank you so much for your time. And for everybody else, please continue to check your local Facebook groups, your USO Facebook groups, because there's a lot going on at your local centers. If you don't have a local USO close to you, just check and see where the closest space is. They have a lot of virtual programmings going on right now that you can get involved with. So we appreciate your time and wish you all a fabulous rest of the week. Take care, everybody. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.